Tosha Global Analytics. Please like and subscribe.
Greetings, salutations, and howdy to you all. I'm KT with Tosha Global Analytics. As always, I want to remind you, Tosha Global Analytics was created to provide insight and foresight into the street-level impacts of macroeconomics, real estate and finance trends, and the policies that shape them. Okay, so we covered the generalities of the market and the salient facts on the property in the last video. So let's review them and pick up where we left off. So first off, the asset was a 232-unit B-class suburban infill apartment community comprised of 24 one-bedroom, one-bathroom, 184 two-bedroom, two-bathroom, and 24 three-bedroom, two-bathroom apartments in 29 two-story garden-style buildings. It had market-preferred large units, etc. We also covered things like the internal rate of return, or IRR, for measuring returns. NOI and cap rates were also covered. And so we got to move forward regarding the projections used in the original financial model, income, expenses, and other pertinent terms. Okay, so what the underwriting used with this is a pro forma discounted cash flow, also called a DCF. A DCF shows all the annual cash flows, the capital outlays at the purchase, and the reversionary cash flows at the time of sale, which is what is used to calculate the IRR. So now in the last video, I referenced the definition of IRR relied on the net present value, or NPV, being equivalent to zero, and that the NPV used a discount rate. So in order to mitigate the need for a discount rate, all income and expenses and the cash flows were factored for inflationary changes. Specifically, the expenses were projected to increase at about 3%, and incomes at 4%. However, since this asset would be upgraded and updated to increase the rents, the first 3 years of the income were specifically expressed, showing the annual rental increases expected for those enhancements. They were more or less aligned with the practical processes and management history for implementing past rental increases, that sort of thing. So some expenses were also discretely expressed, or addressed, I should say, though most were simply increased at a 3% projection. So let's look at our first financial overview. It's a DCF table showing just the basics. And before I ever could get to the NOI noted in the first line there, I needed to work through really 4 baselines of rental income that we had to reconcile at different points in the process. The first baseline was, calling the market rents shown in the marketing package, and that's just a starting point. Of course, we also got the T12 financials, T12 meaning the time of 12 months. And that showed what they claimed that they'd actually received in income and actually paid in expenses. So that created a second baseline. We also may adjust the numbers as a bit as more information comes in while we're considering the bid. But that's usually the first 2 baselines. The third main baseline is based on the leases in the files when we audit during the due diligence process. A review of the lease is usually told an interesting story in most cases. Because everything just seems to be a little bit more specific when you see it written on paper, I guess you could say. So, and the fourth baseline, by the way, was what I believe the property would rent for after we employed our value-add strategy. And that was where the NOI shown would start from in year 1. By the way, the strategy with this asset was projected to increase average rents at about $65 per month per unit during the first year, $50 the second year, and $40 for the third year. With these increases, the property value would inherently go up if you were presuming the expenses were flat. However, they weren't going to be flat, and I'll cover that in a minute. But by the way, some of that $65 in the first year and $50 in the second year derived from installing stacked washers and dryers. We're also doing some wood laminate flooring in key areas of units, that sort of thing. And we were screening some patios and balconies as well. Of course, we didn't want expenses to simply stay flat. We wanted the expenses to go down over the first year, especially. Um, so making expenses go down benefits cash flow as well. So it makes sense. So we addressed two main areas to lower expenses, and when I say we, it was our firm, but I was the guy doing the modeling here. So the first area was the loss to lease and concessions. And which we projected to decrease by about 35% after the first year with the strong management program we'd already had in place in other assets. But the second item specifically was insurance, which we were going to lower by about 48% in just the first year alone, due to a large blanket deductible and the premium pricing model we had for property insurance coverage as a firm. So these two areas alone raised the NOI for year two by about 16.7%. This increased cash flow really increased the return of the property overall. Please see the snapshot of the pro forma for the asset, and you'll see some of that. But by the way, we're really getting to the good parts right now, so please like and subscribe. So we knew the performance of the cash flows, or could foresee the performance of the cash flows, and what we could do to maximize value in those, which we meant we were also going to model the terminal cash flow, which was how we could forecast the terminal or eventual selling price. And then we could reverse engineer what we could would be the appropriate maximum purchase price we could pay and make our return. So, by the way, the terminal price is a sales or reversionary price, the sale price at the end. And you determine that by using the terminal cap rate and the cash flow for the projected year following the anticipated sale. So in this case, if we were projecting a 5-year hold, it was year 6. So actually, we can model precisely when the asset should be sold for maximum return. I did that for this property at a later point in the process, but that is really way beyond this case study. By the way, that's going to be included in the second of 2 upcoming programs I'll be offering later in the summer in case you're interested in learning how this process is actually done. All right, so getting back to things, here's a snapshot of some other properties in the market at that time. And so when I analyzed the market the way I did, specifically determining the cap rate, I knew what the property should appraise for and the maximum we should offer. And it's important to kind of anticipate both. Now, I wasn't really done yet, but I had a good idea of where things were. The going in cap rate, which is what the purchase cap rate should be, was right around 6.2 to 6.25. The going in cap rate has the mirror of the going out cap rate, which is also the terminal cap rate. That looked to be flat for a few years when in a time machine, going back to that time. So a 6.25% exit or terminal cap was also appropriate. By the way, oftentimes model properties initially with a terminal cap rate about a quarter point or a half point higher than the going in rate. But, that's a discretionary thing based on the market, the real estate cycle, et cetera. Okay, we're really sliding into the juicy part of this right now. So, again, please like and subscribe. All right. So what would financing look like for this? That's kind of something we needed to know at the time. So, the firm I was with had solid credit, so I decided to pursue what's called agency financing from Freddie Mac. It's a specific type of financing that is through special programs, and that's why it's called agency financing. The firm was able to secure a quote for 75% loan to value at 4.25%, and this was huge. We got 3 years of interest only payments. That really would help out cash flows during the first few years, as the first year had capital outlay for the value add items, and we needed time to actually realize rent increases. However, as you may see later on, we eventually ended up with 4.09%, if I recall correctly off the top of my head. So it ended up actually better than the initial quote. So with the first year's NOI after replacement reserves, like shown here, and with a 6.25% cap, I knew where the price, or the prices for different bids should end up. However, I really needed some more analysis to figure out if it really made sense. Here's what I looked at internally. Cash on cash was strong at over 8% in year one, which is kind of was our benchmark. But of course IRR was negative, and that's normal as cash flows haven't increased enough in year one. This is a longer term model and a longer term plan. I want to interject something here. Two cash outflow categories that were included with the purchase price at year zero. The first is the rehab budget, and the second is the acquisition costs. The latter sometimes includes the initial deposit, or the deposit can be separately addressed, like I've done. When you include acquisition and rehab costs, you have what is called the all-in costs, so that you can determine what your total equity requirement is. And all-in is just what it sounds like. Everything that is spent to acquire the asset. You use the all-in cost to determine your returns, not just the purchase price. Okay, so I could see where the value seemed to land, and I knew that 15.5 was kind of the lower boundary. Nobody who was below that would be able to make it to the next and final round. So we offered 15.575 million. We were number 3 in the order and we were actually the last in the order because they only took 3 to the final round. We then increased to 15.8 million, and we lost to another firm who offered 15.95 million. However, because they weren't able to bring it, we ended up getting the asset. So, as I said before, you want to be close but not too aggressive in these things. If you have a great analysis and you can rely on your numbers, you know where things should really be. And so here's some final numbers. Final note here, our target is normally about 18% IRR. But we ended up sweetening up the return to 23% IRR forecast through year 5. Yeah, that's right, 23% IRR. If you're shocked, I'm not really surprised. 16% or higher is very typical for these types of deals. I just happened to find a property where our firm's strengths and the typical strategies we were going to use performed better than most of the competitor strategies would. And so again, yes, it was modeled at 23% at year 5, but there are some more shocks to come later as well. So one last comparison for reference here. What would the return have been at, say, 16 million? That'd be 22%. 16.3, it'd be 21. And so that makes you think, why not go up there and just win the property outright? You're still making solid returns. Well, it's because the amount of the rental increases and the risk, so to speak, involved in relying on the new stacked washer dryers to bump up rents. Without those, we wouldn't have broken the 20% IRR. So it's obvious that repositioning and acquisition modeling requires some finesse here, but the numbers are the numbers I used then, and the way it worked out in the end will show I was proven right, as you'll soon see. So again, in the first video, I shared the salient facts of the property, some terminology and definitions, some insight into the market. I gave you the general strategy, the measure used to define the return, and rudimentarily described the process I shepherd the properties through. With what I just covered in this video, we now see where we started from, briefly describe the forecast benefits for repositioning, and what the purchase price of the deal ended up at. Now, throughout the rest of the series, we'll look at the repositioning strategy a bit more closely, examine some issues we look for in modeled returns, and then disclose the eventual sale of the property. After all, simply modeling these returns, that's not reality. We need that closed sale to confirm all the numbers. And since the REIT that it had purchased it ended up selling it earlier than planned, that's a different variable that was not in the model, or at least not intended for the model. So the good news is good news was actually found in the end. So, and that's what we're on to next. See you in the next video.
Tosha Global Analytics was created to provide insight and foresight into the street level impacts of macroeconomics, real estate and finance trends, and the policies that shape them. What is happening in the financial world today shows us that those of us on Main Street are in a street fight for our financial futures. In order to win this fight, we need to become truly streetwise.